This is the Lew Rockwell Show.
Well, what an honor it is to have as our guest this morning Mr. Gerald Celente. Gerald's founder and director of the Trends Research Institute. He edits the Trends Research Institute's famous publication, the Trends Journal. He's a close combat practitioner. They better watch out at the TSA. He's also a black belt trainer, a self-described political atheist. We'll link to Gerald's LRC archives. I urge everybody to look at that, to his YouTube archive, to his Facebook page. So, Gerald, many things to talk about. You said some interesting things recently about the so-called enhanced pat-down. But, it struck me this morning, has there ever been a government in the history of the world, even the Nazis or the communists or what other kind of crazy or evil institutions were running things, that claimed the right to feel up its citizens on a regular basis and its citizens' children?
Well, this is part of the process of breaking the people down. They subject you to all levels of humiliation. And it's only breaking down the little people, because the people at the top don't have to go through this kind of humiliation. Not the bankers, not the big executives, certainly not the government officials. They have their private jets and their jumbo jets. And what it is, it's also, when you really think about it, deranged. I don't want any guy feeling me up. If I'm going to get patted down, let me have a choice. And I'll have a woman pat me down if I have to be subjected to that humiliation.
Gerald, it's really quite astounding. And, of course, isn't this also, besides, as you say, the state's agenda to break down the people, humiliate, control, in order to better be able to run society, but aren't there people making a lot of money out of this? Isn't Michael Chertoff, the Chertoff Group, isn't that the usual thing in this sort of big government, big corporation partnership that is the U.S. today? There's always some guy or some group of guys making big money off the latest government outrage.
Exactly, just like the wars. It's the soldiers of the Fortune 500. When you think about it, Lou, could you imagine that we have these so-called military contractors protecting our troops overseas? It's all about money. It's a racket. And when you mention Chertoff, let's go back to what happened with that so-called Christmas Day underwear bomber. He couldn't have ignited it, number one, without an electronic device or very high heat, and the accelerants he had, every expert said wouldn't work. But the very next days following it, while everybody's on vacation, that Chertoff is making the TV rounds, trumping up the need for full-body scanners. How about full-body scammer? This guy's Chertoff Group over there his client is Rapiscan or Rapiscam, the people that are selling these things. This is an outrage, and it's at every level. It's at every level. They're ripping off the little people so these weasels can make money.
And, of course, if they were actually the sort of terrorist threat that they tell us about, who wanted to cause a lot of trouble, why would you deal with the TSA? You could blow up the ticket counters, you could blow up a mall, you could blow up any other number of things if the terrorist threat were actually what they claim it is.
Exactly, and it's to frighten the little people, all of us people, and subject us to their rule. I was coming back on a flight from Las Vegas this week. I was sitting next to an 83-year-old woman. She has diabetes. They pulled her over and patted her down because she had needles with her. And when she wouldn't be subjected to it in public, they took her to a private room and they made her walk barefoot across that filthy airport floor. I'd like to see Janet Napolitano, that so-called Homeland Security Director, being subjected to that kind of treatment. Oh, would it be an outrage? But some poor 83-year-old woman, she said, "I'm an old lady. Why are you doing this to me?" They don't care. They're deranged. Anybody that makes a policy like this, I'm wondering, are they, they've turned this whole nation into a nanny state anyway. What man out there would let somebody else grope them? Come over, take your gun off, take your belt off, and come over here and try to grope me down, and let's see how far we get. These people are only tough guys when they have, their sidearms with them or a bunch of troopers behind them that are going to bring you down. Man to man, they would never do that to me.
Gerald, somehow I think you could take on the whole TSA. I don't have any doubt about it. But when we're talking about groping, they're groping the economy too, aren't they? The big banks, big corporations, big government, of course, whether it's quantitative easing 2 or all the rest of the policies, they're hurting the little guy, destroying our standards of living, building an authoritarian, maybe a totalitarian state. What do you think is happening with the economy, the euro, and also the European economy? What's going on is, of course, we're focused, as we should be, on this latest outrage from the TSA, but what are they doing to us economically?
Well, you mentioned QE2. That's white shoe boy language for printing digital money out of thin air based on nothing and producing nothing and not worth the paper it's not printed on. And what that does is by devaluing the dollar, which they're doing, you're seeing commodity prices go up. Everybody feels it when they go to the pump because most of the commodities are based on dollars. Number two, they're cheating the people. In the old days, with the people that didn't want to take risk would put their money in the bank and get a small return on it in interest rates. Now you're not getting anything virtually. So what they're doing is they're forcing people to try to play into the casino called Wall Street. That's number one. Number two is that there's a meltdown globally. It's a currency crisis brought on primarily by the United States, and I love it. They criticize China for not devaluing, for not raising the value of their yuan, while Ben Bernanke devalues our currency in front of us. Number three is that with this currency war, you're going to also see trade wars follow. And I say currency war, and I don't say that lightly. You hear the finance minister, for example, from Brazil, Manteiga. You hear it from the finance minister of Germany. Everyone's outraged at what the United States is doing, and they're calling it a currency war. Following a currency war, you're going to start seeing trade wars. Trade wars, Lou, plus currency wars equal real wars. Anybody that knows their history, you go back to the Great Depression, this is the same kind of scenario that's lining up. And the white shoe boys come out there and they keep telling us they have solutions to these problems, like they're doing over in Europe. There is no solution. Ireland is going under. Just their bank debt alone is equal to 50% of their GDP, and they're forcing the people again to bail out the banksters. I love the language, the white shoe boy language. They don't want the bondholders to get a haircut. You can't get a trimming. Who owns all these bonds? It's not the people, it's the banks, and they don't want to lose any money. So what are they doing? They're forcing austerity measures. Austerity measures equal you pay more taxes, you get less benefits, and you also get fired. So we're going to start seeing revolutions start breaking out across Europe. There is no solution to this. And all of this talk, by the way, one more thing about how the little people pay and they don't reap the rewards. Look at this travesty with General Motors stock going public and people not being able to buy the stock, only reserved for the big guys. You have to have $500,000 to go in and play. Who made these laws up? People railing about Obama being a socialist? No. Let's call a spade a spade. The merger of state and corporate powers is called fascism. And fascism has come to America. It's come with the TSA. It's come with the bailing out the bigs and taking our money and giving it to them. So we're going to start seeing protests worldwide. There is no solution to this. And we just went through this phony election cycle, and I heard all of these broadcasters out there and blowhards talking about how historic it is. Historic? Yeah, the Gambinos took over for the Bananos. You know, the Republicans and the Democrats, and they're worried about gridlock. And we have to get Congress back so they can work together. Oh, yeah, put the incompetents back with the inepts so that they could give us a bigger shafting. No, the whole thing is a travesty, and they're bringing down this great country right in front of our eyes.
Gerald, you talk about war as coming about as a result of the currency wars and especially the trade wars. Do you think they're going to bomb Iran? Are they going to attack or invade Iran? What's their next war that they're scheming?
It does looks like Iran is going to be the next one. And of course the whole Middle East situation, this bogus thing they always talk about, Middle East peace talks. It's like Groundhog Day. Nothing ever happens. It's the same routine. They roll out the red carpet. The Secretary of State chit-chats about this and that, and nothing happens ever. And so we could also see an explosion happen in Israel. Israel keeps getting a free ride. I don't want to be called, anybody listening out there, don't call me an anti-Semite. I could call what I see is the way I see it. If you don't like it, fine, but don't tell me I have to believe your line either, anybody. And the way I see it, and the way the world sees it, Israel keeps breaking international law by stealing Palestinian land. And I don't want to give my money to Israel. I don't want to give it to Italy. I don't want to give it to anybody. And we're giving our money to these countries that are subjecting and subjugating other people to these draconian life that they're leading by stealing what they have and making life harder for them. So it could happen in Iran. It could happen with Israel. The Middle East is the tinderbox. And, of course, then there's Pakistan. I love it, Lou. Norway must be Orwell spelled backwards by giving Obama the Nobel Peace Prize. He's sending in more predator drones into Pakistan and killing, alleged militants. What, all of a sudden the CIA becomes the judge, juror, and executioner? And you don't think there's going to be blowback from this? And since when did the CIA get its own aircraft and air force of bombing people in broad daylight? How can this be happening? You know why it's happening? It's fascism. Fascism is taking over America. So expect blowback from Pakistan because you have about 300,000 Pakistanis living in the United States. And if your family got blown up by a bomb sent over by the CIA, neighborhood destroyed, or you've been thrown out of your house like the millions have because of the proxy war being fought on behalf of the United States in the Swat Valley in South and North Waziristan, you'd think you'd be angry. But no, what's going to happen, Lou, when terror strikes, they're going to say, oh, they hate our freedom and liberty. Yeah, try your foreign policy and slaughtering people.
Gerald, you're, of course, as usual, exactly right, but now your analysis of the situation is exactly on target. As I might say, it's always on target. So here's the average guy. He knows that he doesn't want to put money in a bank. As you say, the stock market is just a casino for the big boys. What do you try to do to protect yourself for all the troubles that are inevitably ahead?
Well, what I do, and I don't advise, one of the things, I don't tell people what to do, and I don't want anybody telling me what to do. I look at the facts, analyze them. If they have facts, I'll look at theirs, and I'll come to my conclusions. They could come to theirs. So speaking strictly for myself, as you well know, we forecast the bottom of gold in 2001. When it went down to 255, at 275 in the Trends Journal, we wrote it was the beginning of the gold bull run. We are projecting gold to go to $2,000. It could go way higher, but we think that that's going to be the limit because the world governments will do something to push the price down. So in the meantime, I keep buying gold. I'm 80% invested in gold, and for the people who can't afford gold, silver also seems like a very good play. Anything precious is worth much more than worthless paper, and precious metals to me won't lose their value, particularly over the long run. You look at the stock market, what is it, around 11,000? It's 1999 levels. Gold has gone up from, $275 to it hit $1,420. So the other aspect is I don't keep any money in the bank that I don't have to, and I also buy Swiss francs and Canadian dollars as a hedge against the dollar being devalued. And to me, the Swiss are the money cockroaches of the world. Whole World War II went on, and the criminals have to put their money someplace, and Switzerland is the safest bet. People are putting it in Singapore, but I don't trust Singapore because Singapore isn't Singapore, it's China.
Gerald, I followed Joe Salerno's advice to take your cash out of the bank, and I love it how hostile the banks are when you want to get your own money out in cash. I mean, one of the reasons I do it is because it makes it tougher for them to make loans. It's only on the margin, of course. There's only a tiny amount comparatively. They still hate it. I remember right after 9/11 what happened to you when you tried to take your own money in cash out of the bank.
Well, first thing was that I had it in CDs, and I had it with Fleet Bank. And I was prepared for 9/11. I knew something, whether it was, a conspiracy or whatever, and I knew something was good. It was in USA Today. I wrote about it on December 14th, 2000. The headline read, 2001 won't be our year, Trendseer says. And I gave a lot of the reasons why. So when it happened, immediately I went into action. I wasn't frozen by the event. And the first thing I did was I called the bank up and wanted my money wire transferred out from Fleet Bank to the Rhinebeck branch of my bank, because I was ready to head to Canada if they blew up the nuclear power plant at Indian Point, which is 40 miles north of Ground Zero. And they told me I couldn't get it out because CDs are financial instruments traded on Wall Street, and Wall Street's closed. So that was that story. And this time when there's a terror strike, I believe they're going to close the banks. And they'll call a bank holiday, and it'll devalue our currency even more, just as they did in 1933 when they repegged the price of gold from $20.62 an ounce to $35 an ounce. So in other words, it cost you 70% more to buy what you bought the day before. Then later on, when the financial crisis happened, I went to Key Bank. I wrote about it in the Trends Journal. I went back with the executive editor of the Trends Journal, John West, so I'd have a witness to this. They harassed me to withdraw $30,000 like you would not believe. And then the bank manager comes over to me, Lou, and said, I want to know what you want to do with this money. I said, what are you, out of your mind? How dare you ask me what I want to do with my money? They made me feel like I was robbing the bank. Here's my slogan, Trends Journal slogan for 2011. Break the chains. As long as you keep dealing with the chains, you'll never be free. Buy local and bank local. If everybody takes their money out of Chase, out of Wells Fargo, out of the Citigroup criminal banks, they'll break the banks. And the only way this country is going to survive, Lou, is if we go back to local. I don't want to be run by a multinational. So I believe that anybody that gets caught with their money in the bank if they have a bank holiday, they deserve what they get because they're not getting anything by keeping the money in the bank. Oh, it's for your protection. It's for your safety. Yeah, again, the nanny mentality. What do you have, all your jewelry in the bank? What do you take your money and you hide it someplace in your house? Where's a criminal going to walk in there and say, oh, I know where it is. It's in that paint can under the other 100 paint cans in the middle of a bunch of junk? You could hide it. Use your imagination. Why give them your money so they can loan it out and make more on it? They're not giving you anything back, and they'll take it from you in a split second.
Gerald, I can remember what happened to people in my family when the bank holiday was declared by Roosevelt in the Great Depression. And, of course, all savings were, in effect, confiscated. People lost all the money they had in the bank. However, if you owed the bank anything, of course, you still had to pay your loan. So your obligations to the bank continued while the bank had no obligation to you or your property. In fact, their only obligation was to steal your property. Of course, the banks today are far more powerful than they were even in those days.
Exactly. Again, you look at the numbers. When I say fascism, I mean it. What do you have, 10 banks controlling 80% of the nation's assets? Who made this thing up? And we're supposed to say, oh, they're too big to fail, we need them? And look at this whole fiasco with this robo-signing, the fraud closure episode, where people are just fraudulently signing affidavits. And they come up again with that white shoe boy language. Robo-signing? How about criminal activity? If you or I did it, they'd have us in jail. But oh no, it was just, expedient. Yeah, quicker way to rob us, robo-signing, pay to play. That's another one, this guy Ratner the Rat over here in New York. He just got a settlement with the SEC for pay to play. In other words, you got to pay off somebody, bribe them, and so that you can get their state contract to invest their money. Pay to play. How about bribery and fraud? And what does he get? Oh, he can't do business with the government, with brokers for 2 years, and he gets a fine. None of them go to jail, just like that guy Mazzillo from Countrywide. They get a fine. You can't do business for 2 years. Yeah, but you steal something 3 times at a 7-Eleven. Oh, we got to break down here. We got to get tough on crime. Three strikes, you're out. So that's what's going on, Lou. And again, anybody that believes their politicians deserves what they get. Anybody that trusts their banksters, they deserve what they get.
Gerald Celente, thanks so much for coming on. And I want to urge everybody to take a look at the Trends Research Institute, Gerald's journal, the Trends Journal. We'll link to everything on this with this podcast. And Gerald, thanks a million.
And thank you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
You've been listening to The Lew Rockwell Show. Produced by rockwell.show, the best-read libertarian website in the world. If you'd like to advertise on this podcast or on the website, email advertising@rockwell.show. And thanks for listening.